everybody. Hello, Janice.
Hi, Katie.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm seeing that everyone has jumped on here. Drea is over on Facebook doing some moderating, and Emily is over on YouTube doing some moderating because you are on air with me.
Yes. Yes.
There you are. Um, I spent the morning working with a new um, camera program. So forgive me. I hope that today the picture on my side is going to be a lot clearer. We'll see. Hopefully, it doesn't all end in tears, but we'll uh, see how that goes. But
It
today,
rarely, it
Janice,
rarely ends in tears, Kate. But tears of joy.
well,
Tears of joy.
that's right. I always like to put that caveat out there. So today, Janice, we are going to talk about our new pearls that we've got going on. And you have a special treat for us talking about thread and all kinds of great stuff. So I'm going to start off, Janice, with the pearls that I have in front of me. And then we're going to jump to your camera and you're going to take it further and talk about threads and select threads, etc. Um, Let me get the comments here. Everybody's saying, JP, you look marvelous.
Oh,
Everything's marvelous. It is true. We're really, this is our, Janice is in her zone today with, pardon me, with these pearls for sure. So um, let me look at that. I hope it's clearer.
it looks good here.
So
Looks really
good.
nice.
Okay.
Delicious.
Let everybody know because the quality on Wednesday's broadcast, I was just, as you all know, I was kind of horrified. So I think this is better. And good. Michelle's saying the sound quality is a little crisper. Good. I'm glad. So it's always a work in progress. I'm always learning, right? I'm always learning about new stuff. So we launched today some of our favorite things, which are pearls. And Janice and I went shopping, and it's not as easy to shop for pearls nowadays. We kind of have to do it long distance unless we are lucky enough to get to a gem show. But we're pretty excited about these new ones that we have for you. So this is some of our new ones. They're in our new releases, just in section. They just launched. And we really, really love them. We played around with some new colors. There's some higher end ones here. But we just went for it and just chose some really super fabulous pearls for you. So I wanted to share with you a couple of my most favorites here, as well as our new threads and our new clasps. This is our new gold. It's the large gold pearl. It's the largest one of the largest ones. We also have these faceted ones that are nice and big. But I want to show you the size on this pearl. And then Janice is going to talk about sizing the holes for your pearls so you can determine what threads and stuff you're going to use. So let me measure this hole to hole for you. Freshwater pearls, as you know, come in different, it's kind of hard to see that caliper there, but this is a little over 7.5 millimeters hole to hole by about 8.5 millimeters side to side. Okay. And it's a nice, what we like to say, juicy pearl, right? Really beautiful. We also have, Janice, you remember back in the day when you couldn't throw a bead and not hit faceted pearls.
Oh, absolutely.
And now they're just harder and harder to find. And so these are faceted, what we kind of call a rice, we kind of call an oval. You can, choose how you want to refer to them. Um, this one is a little bit bigger. It's 10.5 millimeters hole to hole, and side to side, it's about 8.3. This particular one is 8.2 here. So they're a little bit on the larger scale. We've got these red rice. You can see they're a little bit larger. We kind of go down in size. These two I really love. We've got a peacock and kind of a dark blue color. Both of these are kind of medium size. This peacock color is really just gorgeous. I love that green. It mixes really beautiful with this light green, mixes really beautifully. We put up two beautiful strands of classic cream pearls. Janice's real favorite on these classics, on the kind of the creamy potato colored pearls. We've got a smaller one. This is in the 5 millimeter range, and this one's about in the 7 millimeter range. We really love these. And so we also added some new silk colors. As you know, a while back, we added our silk on the spool, and we were waiting to get some other colors in, this gold, this plum, and this green. Unfortunately, the vast color array of silk that we used to carry and used to be available to us just isn't anymore. So, but we got these beautiful colors in, and this gold, look at this gold, Janice, with that gold pearl.
It's delicious.
I just can't take it. It's so lovely. And our new clasps that we got in, one jump back to this thread though. We also added, Janice was like, you know what, Kate, it's great that you have all of this size F thread. Good for you with your favorite size, but I need some size E. So we added E in a bunch of colors as well. So Janice is going to talk about the sizes. You're going to look at the different knots and stuff that they make. So just bear with me about sizes first. Emily says she's obsessed with that purple violet. I know, Emily, this violet. So let me show you. So Janice and I have also been looking for clasps, and we're always on the hunt for clasps. And we found these really cool acrylic, I guess is what they call them. The fancy word for they're actually plastic on the outside. I know, oh gosh, but we'll call them acrylic because it's a fancier name. But they're really gorgeous. They're light. The color is really vibrant and interesting. Let me see if I can focus, if I can get my camera. It might take a second to focus here. Let me see if I can get that close-up shot here. I'm going to play around with my new interface. So bear with me here. Is it focusing? Maybe that's worse. I don't know. It's going to take me a minute to learn this, but I think it's better. There we go. That's a little bit better. So this is kind of that midnight blue. We have this same size in this kind of lavender color and in this olive. And if you look at that lavender, how beautiful that looks with that purple that Emily loves, this green and this olive colored clasp are like a hand in hand kind of thing. I just love it. And then these, so let me tell you the size. Across is about 10 millimeters here, okay? And then from hole to hole, the actual ball of the clasp is about 9.5 millimeters, but loop to loop, it's about 17.5 millimeters. Well, we also added, I couldn't take it. I love these. Also acrylic. Also, whoops. Also, you can see this heavy magnet. And I wanted to put up this really good tip from Michelle to prolong the life of the clasp. Slide the magnet like so instead of pulling them apart like this, right? That way there's less pressure on the magnet and the glue, these magnets are held in by glue. This will have a much longer life. If for some reason your magnet does um, come unadhered, sorry, I'm trying to take the comment off.
That was
You
my fault, Kate.
Oh, was it? Oh,
I'm just learning to use,
oh, the back end.
yeah.
Oh, good job, Janice. Just like me, learning on the fly. I love that. Yes, good job. I love it. Um, we're nothing if not fearless here at BJOP, which is great. I love it. But this is really a heavy duty clasp. I just love it. So let me give you the millimeters on this size. Almost 14 side to side and about 20, little shy of 20 millimeter loop to loop. You can use zap glue to just glue that magnet right back in. It's fine. And it comes in this patina blue color. And folks, just look at how it goes with this green. Just beautiful. I love it. I am going to use it with this gold, I think, and the green thread because I like mixing up color, and this is going to be great. We also have it in this black and silver and the black and gold. What's that, JP?
Kate, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought maybe we might just take a minute and just share how the pearls, like the faceted pearls, how they got their faceting, and how these wonderful, amazing pearls get these colors because they don't come
Sure.
out of mussels or oysters um, in cranberry or peacock
Mm-hmm.
blue.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to share a little bit of your knowledge about?
Yeah, so the faceted pearls, the way that the faceted pearls are done, and you can see here, whoops, here we go. You can see the facets. The facets, let me see if I can get that into focus. The facets are done like facets would be done on a gemstone. So they're done by machine and faceted like so, right? And so they're really beautiful crisp facets. The nacre that's over the top of the facet or of the pearl is kind of a clear. So I believe that they coat these a little bit to do the faceting over the top, but they're really just a luscious color. Now, for colors, Janice, you may know a little bit more about this than I do, actually, but the natural color pearls here are usually the white, sometimes peach, sometimes pink. But the colors, they've come a long way with what we call enhancing stones, enhancing pearls, enhancing semi precious beads. And so all of these, we test them and look at them to double check to see kind of their color fastness. Now, anything that's a colored bead is not ever going to be 100% color fast. It's just not. It's the nature of dyes and dyeing beads and enhancing the color of certain beads. But where 20 years ago, I'd be really worried about a red bead or a blue bead having some bleed, I'm not really worried as much about it now. A lot of the ways that they color these is they color the liquid, the water that the pearl is grown in, but a lot of them are dyed post grow, I guess is what I want to say. What do you want to add to that, JP?
Well, that's true. Like if you pick up those cranberry ones and you notice that the thread at the end isn't the thread at the end or there, it's sort of a pinkish
Mm-hmm.
color. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that usually is a sign that they have been enhanced somehow.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that the secrets of how these are made now, and they have been perfected in China, really, until maybe 15 years ago, we just couldn't get freshwater pearls larger than 5 or 6, 7 millimeters. And now
Mm-hmm.
there you can get a freshwater pearl 10 millimeters. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and they're very protective about how they color them, but they are treated, heat treated, um, so that
Mm-hmm.
the color is stabilized. Um, and the days of at least the pearls that we where we purchased them, the days of I remember at the old shop how there was a woman who went to a wedding in a white linen suit on a warm summer day, and she got a little perspiration. It's women don't sweat, they glow.
You're right. We
And
glow.
her suit, the color came off on her linen suit.
Mm-hmm.
We were all mortified. But now it's a very different story if you buy
Mm-hmm.
from reputable dealers. And you can always take a paper towel, wet it a little bit. Um, uh, Kate, you've used Windex, haven't you?
Yeah, one of the things that I use Windex mostly on glass, on like glass beads. I use it sometimes on semi-precious, and just a light solution because if anything is going to come off, I'm trying to see if I have any spray here. And the sprays I use kind of like a milder kind of a spray. I've got one here. Let me see. And what I'll do is I'll spray some paper towel and
Hmm.
I'll rub the beads, on them. Now to kind of clean them and to make sure that I've got some color fastness. Now,
Hmm.
Janice, back in the day when we used to go buy pearls, we would buy them from like a dusty old room, right? And
Yes.
would we would actually wash our pearls like in a mixture of ivory soap to get them to get the what I like to call the dust of the ages off
Right.
the pearls. But you can see here, let me show you. I didn't want to spray on my velvet pad, but let me show you this. Okay. I sprayed some Windex cleaner on my paper towel, right? And I'm rubbing it on the red pearls. And you can see there's no residue that comes off. So if you're concerned at all, and I won't soak this in it, right? I don't want to do that. But I do kind of, I want to wipe them down and double check. Sometimes there's a little bit of dye transfer from the thread. So you want to make sure that you're not getting that dye transfer, that you're just getting dye transfer, that the beads aren't transferring color. But you can see there's no dye on these at all. So that's one of the things that I do, a little bit of a spray and a little bit of a wipe. And you'll feel a little more confident, I think, in pieces that are enhanced. Um,
And it's a very mild solution.
Very
It,
mild, yeah.
it's not full strength glass
No,
cleaner. It's just
exactly.
a tiny little bit. And if you just want to use water,
Yeah, you can use water
just
as
use water.
well.
You can
Yeah.
also just do the pearls at the end of the strand,
Mhm.
or you do your whole strand just to
Mhm.
check. But
Just to check.
it's not a bad idea when you're shopping for pearls to, have a little spray bottle with you at your gem show, you know.
Right.
And if it bothers the vendor, then you probably will ask them
That's
to
not
do
the
it
vendor
for
for you.
you. And if they
Yeah.
still won't do it, then you probably want to purchase
Yeah.
them someplace else.
So you can
anyway,
use a mild solution of like the kind of environmentally friendly kitchen sprays. There are some that are less harsh, right? I wouldn't use anything that had like ammonia or anything in it. You can also do a really light solution of ivory soap and water, very light. Then you would rinse your pearls underwater. But they really, I just, again, I put the towel down. Again, I don't want to put it on my velvet pad, but I just do like a little rubbing of this. The Windex I use especially with old crystal. The thing that I like about Windex is it's made to dry without streaking. So that light solution in water, especially with like vintage crystal, which I love and am always on the lookout for, it will clean those crystal beads. And I clean them on the thread before I unstring them and restring them on fresh thread. And just the sparkle and the fire really comes out. But again, when you're using anything that's near um, uh, moisture, I guess is what I want to say. You don't want to ever soak beads in anything, right? Beads.
Can we see you?
Uh-huh.
Let's see
Yeah.
you while you're talking.
What?
Can we see you? We want to see you.
What you could? Oh, I have the beads on.
I know, but you're
Oh,
talking. I
okay.
want to see you.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm going to actually move it to you, Janice.
Oh, okay.
Let's do that.
Okay.
So let's. I'm going to add your um piece to the stream here. There we
Okay.
go. And there. So why
There
don't
we
you
go.
talk a little bit about the different threads and stuff, Janice, and I'm going to get everything set up here.
Okay. So I have not received my package from Kate with
No.
um well, I'll get it with the new threads so I and the new pearl. So I am actually working with some old spools that I have had for a number of years. And this color I know everyone's going to want. It's this beautiful deep forest. Sorry, we can't get it.
Nope,
This
we
color we
cannot.
can get. I want to make sure these are focused. And then this red we can get. So what I did is I have taken a D, an E, and an F, and I've created some samples. I want to show you first. I know Christine, hi Christine, you were asking what the millimeter gauge of these threads are. You can't even measure it, really, because you put the millimeter gauge on and it just crushes it. So I want to say that in terms of size, the the D is between a micro Ceylon and a fine weight, and the E is more like a fine weight Ceylon, and the F is more like the regular Ceylon, maybe a little lighter. The way we measure what will go through is by taking the pearls. This is at least how I do it. I take the pearls and then I take a piece of wire because I always want to know, well, what could I wire wrap it with? And then the pearls pretty much, unlike all the different beads out there, pearls are fairly consistent with their hole size, and they're primarily 4 to 5, point 0.4 to point 0.5 in size. And so they fit a 24 gauge wire. And so I will always try my pearls on a piece of wire. I would like to say it fits a size 22, even the biggest pearls, but they won't fit. They won't fit on a size 22 gauge wire. So 24 gauge is really the size. If you want to go thinner, you could also, if you were wire wrapping, you could go to a 26 gauge. Um, But then I thought it was important to show you some samples of what it looks like using the size D. And Kate loves to use size F. This is what we were talking about a few minutes ago. Kate likes um, a
Not, I
really
do.
chunky knot. And you can see here, I don't have my, I'm going to use a pencil because I don't have my awl, but you can see that this knot here, and let me know if it's not focused.
Yeah,
Uh,
it looks good, JP.
Good. Okay. Um, Maybe I can get in even a little closer.
There you go. Yeah, it looks good.
Okay. So it's not that huge a difference, but these pearls are, they're a little different each one, but you can see that the knots of the F compared to the E are bigger compared to the E. And then also with length, um, it gives you a bigger knot and more length. Um, I just for my own 2 cents, I prefer the size E for most of my knotting. I don't like the knots to be as much of the story. Um, and then when you get to the smaller pearls, I like to go usually down to a size D. Um, but you can see that you can also use the E. Um, but there is a slight variation, even though the hole sizes are fairly similar. The size of the pearl gives it a different relationship to the knot. So that's what I wanted to say, Kate.
Yeah, no, it looks great. And uh, Kim Crawford is saying, thank you so much for these great visuals. It's really great how you set that up, Janice, so we could really
Oh,
see the difference.
thank you, Kim.
Um,
I used my little Dymo, my little
yeah,
Dymo.
no, it was great. I love it. There's a quick question that Michelle has, and maybe you could talk about this while I finish prepping what I'm doing over here. How do these sizes, Janice, compare to the Griffin thread?
That is a
Silk,
great question,
the silk with
Michelle.
needle. Mm-hmm.
Um, so I happen to have some of that right here next to me. Um, if I the difference between the griffin and the silk on the spools is that the griffin um, has a needle attached to it. I'm going to take one off here and show it to everyone. This is a size 8. This is a big one. I don't know who that is, but I thought I turned all my. So I'm going to
No,
take.
that was me.
Oh, that
That's
was
you.
you. Okay.
That
Oh,
was
that's
me.
me?
No, it was me.
Okay. So this is size 8. And let me get it in focus. And this has, they all, with the griffin, they have the needle that's extruded through the thread. The thread is also twisted, which the silk on the spools is not. See how smooth this is? They are both silk, but they're different. So the silk on the spools at all times must be used double. You can't use the silk on the spools
It's
for
just not
flow.
recommended. Yeah, for a single strand.
Well, I mean, I'm just going to say it's not even not recommended. It's
Mhm.
just not going to hold up.
It's
Um,
not.
it's just really not. I would say, in terms of size, that a size 4 is about the size of. Now we're talking about these threads are doubled. So when you compare this thread on the card, you're talking about this being single and this being double.
Right.
So I would say that a size D is about the size of a 4. The size E doubled is about the size of a 5. And the F, when the F is doubled, it's about the size of a 6. My recommendation is that you have more than one size at your disposal, so that you can, I'll show you what I have here.
You can,
This is,
yeah, really match it to the sizes of your
yeah,
bead.
this
And
is,
remember, folks, that silk, that Griffin silk, it's showing as a single strand, but it's actually a double strand that makes that twist.
mhm.
So it is doubled. It just shows as a single strand.
So this is one of my little sample cards. And I try them. This is a size 4. And again, the size of your pearl really affects how large a knot you want. So one of the most common sizes that we all use is a 4. Now,
Size.
this is, I've done this one on a size 8, and these are using semi-precious. And it's a much bulkier, uh, heftier, and the hole on the semi-precious is larger. So those are some of my, I keep these samples around so that I can try different beads out, to see how they work.
And Janice, do you stretch either that Griffin silk or the silk on the spool?
My answer to that is I the griffin um, the griffin on the card, I don't stretch,
Mm-hmm.
because when I am pulling the knot,
Mm-hmm.
when I'm pushing that knot down, I am
Mm-hmm.
pulling the thread towards me and the knot towards the pearl or the bead. When I
Yeah,
am
just by
doing,
default it stretches. Yeah.
when I do my when I add my knot, I separate my threads. I want to get this in focus, and I pull on it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a good stretch. So the answer is I do not pre-stretch, because I am stretching as I'm knotting.
Yeah. And that's what I do too. Sometimes I pre-stretch if
Mhm,
I don't know if I'm moved to. But the mere action of the pearl knotting
mhm,
um, does stretch that thread out. So
mhm.
I'm going to show you folks. I'm going to switch cameras. Are you good, JP?
Yeah, I'm good.
So what I've done here is I brought some of our colors of our threads in, okay, and you can see the difference. I'm using size F here, the thread. And I wanted to show you how the different colors made a difference with the pearls. Let me see if, whoops, there goes my jeweler saw. Let me give myself a little more light here. There we go. That's a little bit.
Are you able to focus at all, Kate? I know we're
Yeah,
having issues, but
let me let me try and focus this a little closer. Bear with me. I'm working with all of my new technology today. It's very exciting. Let me see if I can focus the camera a little bit. Bear with me. Let me see. Oh, yeah. Let me see. That looks a little better, doesn't it? A little
uh,
clearer.
he, maybe not as sharp as we'd like, but let's.
Mhm. Okay. Well, it's still a work in progress. Sorry,
Mhm.
everybody. I'm working on it. Getting there, slowly but surely. Let me see if I can do it a little bit closer. Anyway, okay. Well, let me talk to you about what I've got here. Um, I've got the different colors of thread. I have the plum, I have the gold, and I grabbed the brown here. And these three colors, you can see the difference in, just the color that they add to the pearl itself or to the overall necklace. And I like using those colors with colored pearls because I think it adds an extra little design, um, little design note with what I'm doing, especially if I'm going to be using, a clasp that's a little more non-traditional, I guess I want to say. It's kind of fun to have a pop of color. I also grabbed this one is called Maroon. It's kind of a cross between red and burgundy and raspberry. I like that color a lot. So let me show you um, how I would get all of this prepped for a project. Let me get this out just a little bit more. Okay, so someone said to put a little bit of white behind. Let's see if that shows the color here. There we go. You can kind of see those colors a little bit. So let me use this green here, and this is the F. So when I'm prepping, and we have a lot of great handouts that you can, and a lot of great broadcasts that we've done pearl knotting with, but I want to show you how I would prep my threads. So these strands run, you can measure them, they run about 15 to 16 inches. They vary a little bit in length, right? Your clasp and your knots are going to add some length. So my usual formula is I measure out 3 times the length of my finished piece and then I double that over. If the beads are a little bit larger and I'm not doing as many knots, I might go 2.5 times, but I don't want to run out of thread, right? I want to have plenty of thread um, so I don't, what do I want to say? So I'm not knotting with a tiny little piece at the end, right? Plus the silk at the end, when you go through the needle, has a tendency to shred maybe a little bit or become not damaged, but it's not as pretty as the thread, that's further down because the beads are traveling down that first length of thread. Janice, what do you do for your measuring?
Um, well, the thread is very reasonable in price, and
Mm-hmm.
so um, I also do 3 times. I might even do if I have small pearls, like
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 millimeter pearls, I will do 4 times because you're
Mm-hmm.
putting so many knots,
No knots, right?
knots per inch, and you don't want to run out. There are tricks to how to add a thread, but really, it's just something it's not like bead weaving and,
Right.
oh, easy peasy. So make sure you do it 3 times or 4 times and then
Mhm.
come back so it's doubled.
So
Um,
you can see I'm doing that here. I've measured my thread, and I'm going to clip this away, and I'm going to thread my needle. Now we carry different sizes of needles at Bead Shop. I usually default to the medium size needle. If you have, and it's the wire, it's hard to see on that gray. Let me put it on my hand. It's the twisted wire needle that we use. It's very similar to the needle that's on the end of the griffin silk, but it's got a large flexible eye on the end, and that eye, when it's pulled through the pearls, will collapse down and go through the needle. But it's large enough now to string our threads through. We carry the needles in fine, in medium, and heavy. Again, my default usually is medium. You may want to have, though, some of the heavy and the fine in your collection, because if you're knotting gemstones that are very small, or pearls, little tiny rice pearls that are small, the fine needle may be the choice that you want to go with.
I agree. Um, I think the medium uh, is a good backup. It fits almost everything unless if you're doing fine gemstones, then it's good
Mm-hmm.
to have the fine one on hand. Um, but I think the medium will work for most.
For
It will
most.
certainly work for the pearls that we have in our collection.
So I'm threading my needle to the center point on my thread here, okay? And at the end, this is something that's very, very important, okay? So I want you to take a moment, and this is the cause of a lot of issues when people are knotting their beads. So I'm going to use this end tip, and the end tip is a little cup that has a hook on the end. And the hook, let me see, I'm still having some focus issues, which I'm not excited about. Let me see if I can fix that focus. The cup end tip is really, it's what holds your strand to the, bear with me here, I'm going to make sure this gets in focus. The little end tip is what holds your bead strand onto your clasp. Okay, so we don't just tie the strand onto the clasp. We use this end tip. So what the end tip looks like, I'm going to draw it for magnification purposes. And I'm going to use what we call the classic end tip today. It's the little cup. So there's a little cup on it like so, right? And there's a little hook that hooks down like that. All right. And there's a hole in the bottom of that end tip. Now, when you're using different size threads, the size of the knot really makes a difference, because this little hole, though it looks small, it's very easy to just tie a knot and have that knot pull. Maybe it doesn't pull through right away, but it'll pull through, and then your end tip will be lost and you'll have to start over, and it's a bad scene. So with size F that I'm using here, I usually always tie a knot with a loop going through twice. Sometimes you can go and get away with one time, but the holes in the end tips, they do vary, not between end tip to end tip that you purchase, but you may have purchased some that have smaller holes or larger holes, so you really want to test it. With E, I would go ahead and I would do 2 times to 3 times. And with D, I would do 3 times to 4 times, just depending on the size of the hole in your end tip. Okay? So the way I tie that knot is also very, very important. And I'm going to show you how I do that. Here's the end of my thread, and I've got my F here. Okay? I'm going to make my knot. It's just an overhand knot. I'm going to make my loop. I'm going to come through, and I'm going to send these tails through twice through that loop. Once and then twice. I don't tie a complete knot and then try and tie a complete knot over on the top of that, right? That's going to just give you a little chain of knots that are going to end up pulling through. But when you loop the ends of your threads through the loop of the knot that you're forming, you're going to get a fatter knot, a big fat, what we like to call a juicy knot. So I'm going to just tighten this up like so. Tighten and tighten. And at this point, thread is buoyant. Silk thread, especially, is buoyant. And it wants to start unknotting practically the moment that you knot it up. Okay? So, what you want to do is you want to add your glue to that knot right away so it doesn't loosen. So, I'm going to get myself a little baggie or a little piece of paper here. And I'm just going to add my GS Hypo right on that knot. Okay. And I want to make sure that that glue is going to saturate that knot and it's going to glue that knot together. I don't use super glue or zap glue because I don't want any of the glue that I'm using to travel down the thread and stiffen it. Okay, if that makes sense. So let's, add that glue there, and then you can continue to work. I can also give it a little bit of a dab so there's not extra glue there. But I can continue on now and work with this knot or with this thread. I'm going to place the end tip so that the hook is facing down, and when I put my needle through that end tip, I'm going to put my needle up and through past the hook, up and through, and I'm going to just slide all of my thread through this giant drawing of my end tip so that the knot is going to sit right there inside the cup. Okay? Like that. Then I don't do anything else. Now I'm ready to start stringing. So let me put the actual end tip on the end. It'll be hard for you to see because it is small. I'm using one of our new gold-filled end tips. We have them in gold-filled and sterling. We also have some beautiful new, what we call our pearl clasps that are the filigree clasps that are in gold fill and sterling. We're going to be using those in a project soon. So there's my end tip that's on. Now, one of the things that Janice likes to do, and I like to do too, I like to make the end a little fancy. But not only does it add a little bit of panache to the strand, it adds a little bit of protection to the thread. What kind of spacers do you like using, Janice?
Well, I will use anything from a very tiny filigree bead cap to the Tiara Cast little daisy spacer, the Tiara
Mm-hmm.
Hishi. What I like to do is make the end tip, which it's the workhorse of the knotting business. That end tip will outlast any other part of the necklace if it's
Mm-hmm.
used properly and closed correctly. It just lasts forever. But I don't necessarily like it on its own. I
Mm-hmm.
like to make it look a bit more decorative. So I'll use a little spacer bead, or I will use a little cap, a bead cap. Um, but that's just what I like to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just want to point out that we don't put a knot right next to the end tip. We put a pearl on
Mm-hmm.
before we do a knot. So
So what I used here is I used an 8/0 and I
mhm.
used a flat Tiara Hishi. And then, thanks for that, Janice. I had to get a knot out of my thread. So your silk, sometimes it just wants to knot on you. So, but I successfully recovered. So now I'm going to add my bead, my first bead. Now, you can go to our website at beadshop.com and download the exact same handout that Janice has used all of those years in her pearl knotting class, and take a look at it. We also have a whole bunch of of tutorials on knotting with different things, the knotting tweezer, the awl, just knotting with your hands. Today I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm just going to knot really quick with my tweezer. I mostly knot with just my hands. So and that's kind of the method that the bead shop method that I learned so many years ago. We all do it slightly differently, but you kind of find your level with that type of knotting. But a really good way to start is also using this tweezer. I find that sometimes the knotting tools, they don't place the knot exactly where I want it. So I find I have much more control with a knotting tweezer like this. So let me just show you very quickly. I'm going to come in and I'm going to tie that knot just like I did at the end of the silk to form the knot that sits in the end cap or in the end tip. Okay. And I have my loop of my knot sitting here. Okay. Now I have my tweezers and I'm going to come in and I'm going to put one leg of the tweezer inside of the knot and one leg on the outside. And I'm going to grip the thread very lightly there by the hole. Okay. And I push the tip. You can see that there. The tip of the knotting tweezer is in my velvet pad so that the thread can't pull out. All right. So I'm going to tighten. I'm going to come in because my tweezers are slightly open, right? But the tips are still down in the mat. And I'm going to use that tweezer to walk that knot down. If there's a twist in my thread actually. So let me untwist it. As long as you have a knot that's open like this, you can open it and close it and reposition it. Really resist the urge to try and tighten it before it's in position. So I'm going to place my tweezers one more time. There we go. I walk that thread down so it's right there by the knot is right there by the pearl. And I pull my tweezers out. Now I'm going to tighten this knot. I'm going to close lightly again the tweezer around the threads and push the knot up towards the pearl while at the same time pulling the loose threads down towards me. So tweezers go up and the thread comes down. Now I open the threads just like we do and we pull just slightly, and you can see that that knot has landed just where I need it. Now, when you're knotting, you don't want your knots to be too tight to the hand. Okay, they want to look visually tight, but in reality, you want enough room so that the necklace will have some give to it, will have some movement to it. Anything you want to add there, Janice?
No, I'm just enjoying watching you do this and then also reading the comments. Emily is just I have to let me just put one of her comments up. It's just like uh, she's got all of this great information about plating, and we have to have a, a show just on this.
Yeah, we need to do a
Yeah, yeah. But
because
we
we've
did,
had a lot of experience with plating metals and plating our own
yeah,
thing.
we did get a question. I'm going to try and take this comment away now. Let me see if I can do it. Um,
You can at the very top it should say hide current comment. See in the feed? Yeah,
oh,
there you go.
there we go. Okay. There was a question about how long silk will last.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good question. If you store your silk in a cool, dry area, your silk will last decades. I have silk here that these spools of silk, some of them are when I first opened the shop with my mom 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the probably the most common thing that would happen is the silk would fade
Mm-hmm.
before it would rot.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the same as cotton. Cotton won't last that long, but silk, if it's stored properly, it'll go a lifetime.
Yeah, the silk, what you want to do, especially silk, you don't want to store your threads um, in any kind of direct sunlight. Sun will not only fade the color, but it'll start to degrade the thread, which is why when you go into museums and you go into the textile collection is always dimmed, right? They usually have some kind of UV coating on the cases and things like that to really light can be really damaging. Now, what we're using, day to day kind of stuff here with the silk and with our nylon threads and stuff, it's gonna last, as Janice says, a good long time. Especially, and let me tell you, do not wear your knotted pearls, folks, in the shower, in the ocean. I know pearls come from the ocean, but they don't want to go back. They want to live on land. You don't want to wear them in the pool. God forbid chlorine, right? Just the pearls are not a, just don't wear them in the water. Make me happy. Okay. So that will significantly lengthen the life of your knotted necklaces. Now, we all have, or many of us may have, some pearls that we inherited from a great aunt or a grandmother or a friend. And the end of the thread, the clasp is over here, and there's a bunch of empty thread, and the first pearl starts here. So silk will stretch over time because it's a natural fiber. Nylon stretches much less, like Ceylon, Eslon, those threads, they stretch much less because they're not a natural fiber. Um, so the silk, where it degrades and breaks is when the necklace has stretched and that silk is exposed, and then it's easily damaged and broken. So when you see your necklace, an old necklace that has some air in between the beads and the knots, it's time. It's time to restring. So you can see here I'm doing that hand knotting. We'll do another
Mhm.
uh, hand knotting. I do it a little bit differently than Janice does, but her handout from our archived class handouts on beadshop.com from our store, you can download the very handout that Janice has. So you can see here, I've done that green. It's a beautiful color. I'm going to add this clasp. Now, let's talk about adding clasps, Janice, before we and adding the end tip on the other side
Right.
before we finish this, because this is important. So um, here, remember how my end tip was facing down, right? And when I put the end tip on, I put my needle up through the cup like this so that the knot is inside the cup.
So think of it as a little umbrella,
Mm-hmm.
and um, you start out, like I used to teach. So you start out, it was, the movie Singing in the Rain, and I'm just brain freezing now on
Gene Kelly.
Gene Kelly, and he starts out and he's spinning the umbrella over his head. You want to remember that the placement of the hook or the handle of the umbrella is going to always face the clasp. That's what
That's
the
right.
job of the end tip is to hook to the clasp. So if
Right.
you're disoriented, don't know which way, if that hook is touching your first pearl, you've got it on the wrong way. Turn it
Right.
around.
Turn it around. Exactly.
And
So if I have, oh, go ahead, JP.
no, I was just going to say, okay, now you're going to show. I love these drawings. This is great.
This is how these are drawings that I do in every Pearl class. This
Yeah.
is it. So here's my final pearl, okay? And we
Right.
don't want to have a knot in between. So we add a bead and then we slide this down. Also, when you slide your knots, and I wanted to make this point especially, when you're sliding your knots down, especially if you have a larger piece of thread or a longer piece of thread, you want to make sure that there isn't a little bubble of thread coming out the side. I'm going to greatly exaggerate it so you can see it. But sometimes you get this, right? A little bit of thread that isn't pulled all the way. So make sure when you put your bead on to really pull both of those threads through so there's not any excess thread down there. So what I'll do is, since I started with a little spacer, I'm going to finish with that spacer. And I'm going to put that Chirahishi and the A dot right there. And I'm going to slide those on all the way down. Again, visually tight, but not so tight that my necklace is, stiff. I'm going to invert my umbrella. So where Gene Kelly was holding it up here at the beginning, he's thrown it in the air here at the end, at the finale, and the handle of the umbrella is up in the air. Okay? So I'm going to slide that needle now through the cup, the bottom hole of the end tip, slide it up, slide it up, slide it up, so that my strand is sitting right there below the cup of that end tip. Now, tying the knot in this cup is really easy at this point. I'm going to do it with this strand right here. I'm going to do it with actually the purple strand because it's darker. And I'm going to put one last bead on here because there's a knot. And I think folks always worry about, oh my goodness, how do I get this knot into the cup of that end tip? How do I do it? Well, what you do, go ahead, JP.
No, I was just going to say this is actually, we have to take credit. This is a technique that we created, that whether you use the silk on the spool or you use the griffin with the needle, you can separate your threads and put the knot in. Most teachers will have you try to get your tweezer and pull the
And
knot down to
finagle
that.
that knot, yeah,
And then
down
we
the cup.
had this aha moment. Wait a second. You can just create, a square knot by
Yeah.
separating the threads and tying a knot.
And so what you're going to do here is we're going to cut away our excess threads. Okay, so there's my thread that has the needle on. I'm going to give myself enough space here to tie that knot. So I'm going to come in, leave myself about 3 inches, and clip it away. Now what I do, I also have a small end tip on here that's laying over my big end tip drawing, but I want you to be able to see this. So what I do is I separate my 2 threads like this, and my pearl is sitting below the cup there. And I'm going to tie a square knot, just as Janice said. I'm going to go right over left and put that right hand thread through the loop and tighten it down. Now you want to make sure when you are tying that knot that it's going through this side, the open side, not getting hooked around the closed side of the loop. It's very easy to tie the knot and have the thread catch behind the end tip. So you want to make sure that that first knot sits in there. Now, what I do next to really do a knot, create a knot that's going to stay for the ages, I'm going to, before I tie my second knot, I'm going to add my glue and into the end tip so that when I tie my second square knot over the top, I'm putting the lid back in the GS here. When I tie that second square knot going left over right and down, there's going to be glue in the center of that knot, and it's going to kind of creep, I guess, up so that the knot is completely saturated with the glue. And then I'm going to add just a little bit more on the top. Now, the secret to this, the second secret, is you want to let this sit 24 hours. And I'm not kidding. We used to do many, many repairs in our store, pearl knotting repairs. And we'd have our pearl knot. We do some of them we do in house, and we have this great lady, Catherine, who would come and do our knotting. And she would do the knotting, and then she'd drop them off, and she would say, cut the threads tomorrow, because she had just done them and she had to, the glue had to sit. So we always wait overnight, and then you can come in with your really sharp thread snips and cut very close to the knot, one strand at a time. And that's it. Okay. Then you're going to add your clasp. I'm going to come in and get rid of these strands now, but we'll pretend that the hands of time have swept. Okay, I cut them under tension. And now this is the other thing that you really want to pay attention to. I didn't get all of this off, but it doesn't matter for this demo. You really want to make sure, see, oh, I'm so glad this happened. Janice, look what happened.
I was going to say.
And in my head, I was saying the same thing. Thank goodness it happened when I was doing the demo. So let me get this one and let's talk through this.
So the knot on the second side, because when you started on the first side, you did a double knot so that it wouldn't come through the hole. The hole on end tips can vary. It can be 0.38, it can be 0.26 millimeters. And it's important to be able to test the hole both on the starting knot and the finishing knot. But when you put the end tip on the second side and you're going to do a square knot, my recommendation is that you mirror similar to what you did on the first side.
Exactly right. And I wasn't. I was so into making sure to show you how to get that knot down that I wasn't thinking about the circumference of my knot. So my feet of bead clay has come into play here. So what I would do, let's take this back. Thankfully, I've got another little piece here, but I'm glad I made this mistake on camera so you can see how to rectify it. Because had I done that on a necklace and the end tip would have come off here, I'm done. I have to recut this. I have to restring. So it's good to also always do a little sample too, especially if you're testing your threads, you're testing your clasp, all of those things. This little tiny tester of a necklace will save you a lot of tears in the long run if you make the mistake on your finished piece. So again, let's go back to that square knot. Let's go right over left. But instead of going through just that once, I'm going to go through twice. And I feel like the silk wants to compact. The silk is like water. It flows, it widens up when there's space, and it compacts down really tight when the space is small. So I'm actually on this side going to go through 3 times. Okay, and see how I've flipped it through 3. Okay, and tighten. And now you saw me do that. I'm not going to do it at this juncture. I'm going to go ahead, add my GS, and then I'm going to tighten over the top of this. Okay, so I'm going to come here, and I'm going to do left over right, and I'm going to just go through twice this time. And what that gives me is a nice fat knot down inside the end tip. And you can tell I haven't purl knotted in a while because I made that rookie mistake. And then I'll come in and I'll glue it there.
And you can always tell which knot you ended with and which knot you started with, because the knot you start with is together. The threads are together. And the other knot, which was a square knot, is they're separated.
Separated, exactly. The other thing that you want to check with a clasp is you want to make sure that the loop in your clasp, the size of the loop for the clasp, is the right size for the end tip. Now, this can be a spot where the end tip is so small, right? The loop of the end tip is so small that when you close it, here's the hook, and it closes, and the tip of that hook just sits down inside the end tip like that, right? There's the thing, and the knot is here, okay? So this area in between the cup and the top of the end tip is so small that when you have a clasp on it, it's going to stay closed because there's not a lot of space, a lot of air there, and the width of the hook, the width of the metal on the hook is relatively wide. So it's like a little bar that's going to curve over and it's not going to open up. However, with your clasp, let's say that's our clasp there, and it's got a loop here like this at the end. The hook on the end of that clasp needs to be large enough so that when the hook of the end tip goes through, there's movement for this to move around. If this connection is stiff or if it doesn't move as freely as you want it to, it's going to either pull that end tip open, or if the hook isn't soldered on your clasp, it's going to pull that loop open. So a good jump ring for this, if you want to connect it with a jump ring, I would use our smaller, plain, oval jump ring that closes in the center. And so you can connect the ball clasp, the oval ring, and then the end tip. You don't want a jump ring that's giant because that's going to make a big, that's just going to make a big connection there and this will open up. But if it's small, there's less air to get in there and it'll hold better. I'm going to check and see if this, I haven't even checked. I think that this has enough room here to move. when I close it. And I'm just going to very gently, I can close this on there. I'm just going to very gently, I would have cut these strands off. I very, very gently just push that end tip in so it sits, the hook sits right in the cup. You don't smash the end tip. You don't smash it closed around this loop. You want to make sure that there's a lot of movement here. Okay. There's Kathleen says, and this is a good tip. She uses a size 15 in the cup of the end tip, and then she ties her square knot above that size 15, and you that'll act like a little stopper to help the thread not pull through. I do that too. Depending on the size of my end tip, sometimes I use an 11, sometimes I use a 15. It just depends on what I have there. So does that, I think that answers, I hope, Janice, that answers a bunch of questions. What do you think?
I love today's show.
I do too.
I could do a whole channel just on pearl knotting.
I'm going to put us all up right
just
here now.
pearl knot.
Just
Let's
knot and knot.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
The pearl knotting channel.
Yeah.
Let me move this. Let me remove this.
I agree.
There's a quick question. Linda has a question. The end tips that we have in gold fill and sterling, they will tarnish because all metal tarnishes unless it has some kind of sealant or coating over the top. The great thing about the gold fill and the sterling is you can use a little pro polish pad, and I'm looking around to see where my pro polish pads are. I think I've got a stack over by my metal area, but it's a square of it's a little polishing square that we use to polish our metal. Pro polish pads are a lifesaver. If you don't have any in your stash, and I send them when I make jewelry and send it out when I sell my jewelry, I send a pro polish pad with my metal jewelry so people have them. So a pro polish pad, a little bit of a buff, will return your sterling and gold filled to its original beauty.
That's so true.
Mm-hmm.
We had another question from Nancy. How can we trust that little loop at the end? And the answer to that, Nancy, is that in 60 years that I have been making and knotting, the one thing that has never failed is that little end tip, that it outlasts as long as you bring it over and inside the cup. You don't want to smash it like this because it's going to want to open this way. But if you bring it over and inside the edge of the cup, it's going to last. It will last long after everything else needs restringing. That little end tip is the workhorse of the jewelry business.
It is. And, the top of the end tip, the hook of the end tip isn't just a wire. It's a piece of metal that has width to it. Okay? So just like an I-beam or a girder, if you have a girder that's wide like this, right? And you're bending that girder over and the width is being bent like this, right? That girder isn't going to come unbent, right? It's the width of that metal that keeps that end tip also in place because it's not like a little wire that can just open. It has width, so it's harder to open up like that. Okay. So I think, Janice, oh my gosh, we've covered so much today. A quick question came in. How do you clean very dirty pearls? We covered that a little bit earlier. We talked about using some very weak soap solution, ivory soap solution, you can do that. This broadcast, I think, as you said, Janice, I like to say it's one for the ages. So you'll find it on our social, so you can watch the replay of that.
Right.
You can find, of course, let me do my due diligence here and say that you can follow us on all of our social media at beadshop.com on Instagram. We have great samples that Drea posts up there. So if you tag us at Beadshop, we'll see your piece that you made with Bead Shop products or with Bead Shop projects, and we'd love to add you to our stories. Join us over at the Bead Table. We are going to be hosting some really fun design challenges that you're going to see over at the Bead Table. They'll be open to everyone. You don't have to be a Bead Table member, but you're going to see a lot of cool pieces posted over there. That's going to start in January. So please watch your newsletters for our beader design challenges that are coming up. And of course, you can hit that like, subscribe, and notification button on YouTube. We are so close to 100,000 subscribers. I would love to reach that 100,000 subscriber level in early 2023. We really appreciate each of your likes and shares and comments on all of our social, because not only does it help engage us with you, it also helps general engagement for people to find us who are looking for great bead content. And of course, you can find the information on all of the stuff we use today, the silk, the pearls, the new clasps, all on our website at beadshop.com. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter for all of the latest news from us. We've been in our planning meetings for 2023, and I just am so excited for what's coming down the pike. So don't forget to sign up for that newsletter. It's a great way to keep in touch. So Janice, thank you so much for imparting your wonderful samples and your fantastic knowledge. You've been pearl knotting longer than I've been alive. So, and that's saying something.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've been pearl knotting a long time.
I
Yeah.
have.
So,
I have.
yep. And you learned me how to pearl knot. You taught me how to pearl knot. And so many people. There was a couple of questions about the actual technique. And just a reminder, the best place to go look at that technique is right over on our website and download Janice's handout. And you can follow along there. We'll do another technique broadcast where we'll do some step-by-step pearl knotting as well. Because whenever we do pearl knotting, we know how much you all love it. So have a fantastic weekend, all. Thank you again. Thank you, Janice, and thank you to Emily and to Drea for doing the moderating today. We really appreciate it.
Have a great weekend, everyone, and happy holidays if I don't see you before the new year.
Yeah, I think you will, but
I will. I hope so.
you never know.
Come on again. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thanks so much, everyone, and have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week.
Bye.